Hi, and welcome to the Leader's Edge, how to sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact as a leader in your organization and community. I'm Emily Chiwa, and with me is Georgia Donaldson.
Good morning.
Morning, Georgia. We are leadership coaches and hosts of this show, and today we are speaking with Dana Hayes-Burke. Hi,
Hello,
Dana.
everybody. Hi.
Hi. Dana is the chief business strategist and founder of DHB Vision Strategist about, and she's going to be talking to us about leading across generations. So, Dana, welcome. We are
Thank
so
you so much for
excited.
having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
We are so excited to have you share your experience on this topic as you would have worked with business as a business strategist with many micro business owners and entrepreneurs in the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora. So I can't wait to hear, what you're going to bring to excite us about this very important topic. And Georgia, all of us have heard of the generations. We have the baby boomers, we have the Gen
Mhm,
X, we have the
mhm.
millennials, the Gen Zs, and according to this Gallup survey that I saw when I was looking up, what's happening with the generations right now. They're saying millennials and Gen Zs now make up almost close to
Yeah.
half of
Yeah.
the workforce in the US. And I'm assuming we are not far, we are similar in terms of
Right.
our makeup, in terms of the demographic. So close to half is in the millennial and the Gen Z era. So the baby boomers are retiring now, mostly, yeah,
Yeah.
and the Gen Xers are in the more senior, sometimes in the more senior, sometimes in
Rules.
the senior roles, and we have
Yes.
millennials in those roles too, and then we have the Gen Zs coming in and up and coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so
So
true.
yeah. So Georgia, in your experience in consulting and HR, I wonder, as we start off with Dana, what are some of the issues you might have been hearing, in terms of the differences that leaders may be experiencing when it comes to their effectiveness? And then we'll bring Dana, Dana on.
Oh,
What
well,
would be some of the questions that they would be raising with you that we think Dana could help us today?
that's a good one, Emily. I just want to say first of all that you and I are millennials. We want to
Oh, millennials, are we are?
That's a nice try. I really had to do that, Emily. Keep us young and fresh. But
Uh,
in the space that I operate in, both when I was leading HR in organizations and large organizations and now consulting, it's so different. When the Gen Zs talk to you, they are bold. When they talk to you about issues, they want a direct answer. And it's so different from some of the baby boomers who are more reserved. And I know it's generalizations. We always talk about generalizations, but a lot of what I'm saying now really applies because there's one organization I know that has the four generations in that one organization, and you can see the struggle and you can see how they are so different and not understanding each other.
yeah.
So, Dana, to bring you in, I'm a CEO, let me say, in an organization with these four generations, but I have work to do. Productivity has to go on. What's
Yeah.
the big hullabaloo about the four generations? Can people just work?
I wish it was as simple as that. But as with all things leadership is intrinsically about the people. It's about how you navigate your relationships with the people and also how you navigate your relationship with yourself as a leader, right? So here we have this is the dynamic that we have.
Yeah.
With each generation, there are general value systems that overarch the way that a generation operates.
Mm-hmm.
These value systems really do come from maybe your upbringing, again, what you've seen around you. And so, what is happening now, where we have actually five generations in the workplace? Because what we often forget is that we do have the silent generation there. And the silent generations are usually the managing directors, the chairman of the board. So they're
Yeah.
not working 9 to 5, but they
Yeah.
are setting the tone for the organization. They are leading the boards, they are leading the committee. So they're there and they're impacting everything. So when you have five generations who have very different value systems,
Mm-hmm.
who have very different things that they see as important and
Mm-hmm.
significant in their world of work, you are going to have conflict. And
Yes.
so, one of the challenges that you're going to have as leaders, and this is where the hullabaloo comes in, it comes in
Yes.
from the idea that there are two issues that are happening. There is the mismatch of value systems that are happening in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the oversimplification of the value add of each generation.
Look at that. So,
Those are the two
so Dana, say that again, because those of us, those who are listening this morning and those who are going to catch it on replay, those two things they have to get this morning. So say that again.
It's significant. The
Yes.
mismatch of value systems.
Mhm.
That's the first thing. What
Right.
I think as important versus what you think as important. And then
Mhm.
the oversimplification of the value add of a generation.
Right.
And so, because of that, we now find people finding themselves on different corners of the ring.
Mhm.
So, the Gen Zs are only good for technology. The baby
Mhm.
boomers are old school. The
Mhm.
millennials, they have low attention spans. So you just kind of put them in these categories, and so you
Right.
oversimplify what they can bring. So you only go to millennials and Gen Zs for tech. You only go
Yeah.
to the older generation for sage wisdom and advice, because we oversimplify what can be brought to the table. And these are really steeped in inherent and unconscious biases that
Mhm.
we have towards different generations. And so
Uh,
when you see those conflicts, Georgia, that's
mhm.
what's happening. As a human being, I will
Mhm.
always make a mental shortcut to ensure that I understand how to operate in this world.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be overstimulated. But when you're a leader, it can cause an issue if you put people into boxes and
Right.
not learn how to see them beyond these generalizations and these categories. So you have to really treat with the mismatch of values and the
Mhm.
oversimplification of a value add of each generation.
But
So,
I tell you, I learn every day, Emily. I learn every day. I love those two, Dana. Yes, yes, Emily.
so I was gonna say, great. I mean, I love what Dina said, and I'm curious
Mhm.
now. In terms of what can we give the audience to help recognize that we have put these different people in different
Mhm.
categories, which are limiting the way in which we interact with them, which is what I'm hearing you say. And I'm
Yes.
curious, like what would you suggest that leaders begin to do as something practical that they can take away from our conversation today as we bring their minds to these generations, and maybe a bit about some of the stress that they might be experiencing, and
Mhm.
how they can how they can start to at least tackle one of these
Yes.
stresses.
So the first thing I want to point out, especially for your audience, is that I understand, and I'm sure we all understand, that as a leader, you're often juggling the dynamics of management and leadership.
Right.
Like you would love to be that source of kumbaya and calm for everyone, but you got deadlines, you have decisions to make. It is not always practical to compensate for everyone. And so you have to understand when there is time for facilitation. And then, of course, when there are times that you have to make decisions that may not give room for facilitation, right? So that's the first
Mhm.
thing. For you as a leader, how you can determine if you are impacted by either mismatching of the value add or oversimplification of the value add that people have is that you need to start paying attention to your language.
Mhm.
Start paying attention to your language and your decision making processes. So, for
Right.
instance, if you have presented with me, Dana Hayes-Burke, as an option,
Mhm.
maybe to lead a team, and maybe it's a strategic team, what goes into your mind if you find out that I'm a millennial?
Hmm.
Huh? Because listen, I'm probably going to be exposing people in their own space as they're listening. They're probably saying, ouch. But if
Mhm.
you say, but she's only, she's in her 30s, what could she bring to
Mhm.
the table? Right
Mhm.
away, you have perhaps lost an opportunity to access a part of me that is very valuable to that project, that strategic part of me that's valuable to that project, because you dismissed me because I'm a millennial.
Right.
The first way that you can recognize whether or not this is actually impacting your decision making process is start looking at when you've put in those buts or
Mhm.
only. But
Mhm.
only,
Yeah.
a clerk. He just came. Oh my gosh. I remember when I started working, the term of the managers at that time was your bright eyed and bushy tail. So it means that what are you bringing to the table?
Yes. 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 You're an
Nothing.
upstart.
Little upstart. And that might be, in fact, true in terms of when you started in the job. But
Mhm.
have you taken a moment to look at what else have you seen in this person?
Mm-hmm.
Has that person been the person who is communicating well, or has that person been the person who is making suggestions or asking questions? Because again,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about Gen Zs being bold, we talk about millennials being bold, but that boldness allows them to help you as a leader to see something that you may not have seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Right.
first thing I want you to look at is what has been the language that you have been approaching your people with in your mind, not
Yeah.
necessarily out loud, but in your mind or in your leaders' chats,
Yeah.
your management meetings. First thing you want to look at. And then the second thing that I want you to do is to start listening. Now, one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that will help you in learning how to access the strengths of the generations, because that's what's happening now. We can see the generational conflicts. But the truth is, if I were to pull a map of what are the things or the strengths of each generation, you would
Mm-hmm.
actually realize that if you have, as in Georgia's case with that company, you have four generations represented there, you have a whole lot of strengths that you can
Mm-hmm.
pull from.
Yes. Play to those strengths.
When you put it on a map, it is really, I've done it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm actually saying it. I put the strengths together and I said, but where the baby boomers had this deficit, the Gen Xers had the strength.
Mm-hmm.
Where the millennials have this deficit, the boomers have the strength. And so if you learn as a leader how to see the strengths in your people, it
Mm-hmm.
is going to be very helpful. So how can you do that practically? One of
Right.
the practical ways that you could do it is start with one. This is not done overnight.
Yeah.
Find one person that you know is showing an interest, that you know you're seeing potential in, and start listening to that one person, making space to have a conversation. All of you
Mm-hmm.
all are looking on probably have that one intern, that one clerk who is so eager, who maybe have a lot of ideas. Make one moment in your week to have a conversation and to truly listen,
Mm-hmm.
not listen with mental shortcuts, not
Yes.
in the blanks and not completing the sentences, but genuinely to listen. There's a principle that I learned some years ago. To be a strong leader, you have to learn how to be the dumbest person in the room. And to say it
Mm-hmm.
that way
Mm-hmm.
probably is going to hurt somebody's ego.
Yeah.
It hurt mine because it's like, oh, dumb. I
Yeah.
don't think it's good to be dumb, but I get it. Because when you think that you know everything, you miss a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
learn how to go into that room with that one person or those two people and listen and ask questions, not to offer solutions, but to truly hear. And so, what you'll inevitably start to do is to start hearing from somebody who's from a different generation than you, and you're starting to retrain the way you think, the way you observe them, the way you value what comes from the people around you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Emily and Dana, as I think about it, how excited we are to talk about this. We have not yet given our viewers, the rundown on the generations. So, Dana, quickly, can you just tell us about the major generations now that we will face in our organization and some of the generalizations that we have about them?
So let's go. I'm gonna go with the main generations. I
Mm-hmm.
did say there's a silent generation, which is called
Right.
the traditionalists, right? And those are the people who were born from like 1927 to 1945. They're senior citizens, but
Mm-hmm.
they are, as I said, they are often the chairman or the
Mm-hmm.
chairwoman of the board. They are the ones who started the business. They're retired, but they still have their hand in the business. We're in the
Yes.
Caribbean. We know how
Yes.
that works.
Yes.
Right? And so what happens with them is that they always think about the way I used to do it when I was coming up, the way
Mm-hmm.
that it was done. What are the values of this business? That's where their strengths lie, is in
Mm-hmm.
understanding the value of the business, meaning that you understand the history, you
Mm-hmm.
understand what it's supposed to bring to the table. Sometimes when you grow in business, you lose focus of where it really started and what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the baby boomers who are from 1946 to 1964. And so they, as you said, they are getting ready to retire. And so
Mm-hmm.
the strengths with that generation is that they have the institutional knowledge.
Right.
They do. But they can frustrate some of our younger colleagues because they move slower. They are very risk averse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a generation that you get that job, you stay in that job, you do not
Mhm.
move from that job. Like, so even in making decisions, you may find that they're very risk averse, but they have the institutional knowledge. And that is so key in growing your organizations. Because sometimes, again, we want to adapt new things, right? AI is here and this is here and that is there. But this is the person who knows the legislation.
Right.
This is the person who understands the policies and procedures. This is the person who's going to help you to marry the new with the old so
Right.
that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Then you have the Gen Xers, 1965 to 1979. And this generation is another hardworking generation, but they are the ones who started taking little risks. Okay, so they're the ones who said, yeah, we're gonna switch careers here and there.
Mhm.
We're going to we're going to try and bring in a little bit more of advancement and automation and processes and procedures. So those are the people, right? So
Mhm.
they are the ones, again, they're very committed. They work very hard. They value hard work, and they value being excellent at what they do. Okay, they value being excellent at what they do. This is also the generation where we had a lot of cross training. So
Mhm.
increasing in knowledge was a
Yeah.
big thing for this generation. Then in comes the millennials. Here comes me.
Mm. And
Where
Emily and Georgia.
this is when the digital age started coming and people now had more access to information. And so this generation looked at their parents working very hard. And so this is a generation that now value quality of life even more than career advancement. So this is
Mhm.
the generation where when this generation entered the workforce, their managers couldn't understand why they didn't want to work late, why they
Mhm.
didn't want to come early, because this is a generation that now started talking and having the conversation on work-life balance.
Mhm.
That's the generation, right? So this is also the generation that knew the technology. So we started to see technology coming in. This generation was bolder. This is the right, like, we had the rights movement before, but this is everybody has the right movement. So this generation is now about advocacy. This generation is the generation that started looking at corporate social responsibility was a big thing for them.
Mhm.
And so it started to be introduced there. And then we had the Gen Zs. And so
So
the Gen
1980 to when was the millennials?
1994, 1990,
94, right. So
Mhm.
95 are the Gen Z.
95 to 2011,
Mhm.
2012 are the Gen Zs.
Okay, so they're like teenagers coming into
Well, the
20.
Gen Zs are in the world of work. So what we're
Yeah.
not recognizing is that there's a new generation, Generation Alpha, which is the
Mhm.
generation of my kids, and they are actually now coming into the world of work. So if people were complaining about Gen Zs, Alphas,
It's gonna be different. Well, of course, every generation brings its spin on things, and their
Yeah.
experience of the world is very different because they are coming in. Remember, I think Gen Zs did not, millennials didn't have cell phones,
no, we did
and
not.
Gen
We
Zs
cell
were
phones
born with it,
were born.
Right.
born
We
with
Gen
tablets and cell phones, and like all those things that
millennials had dial-up internet.
dial up internet.
And millennials had cordless phones initially.
Right.
Then we migrated to cell phones, but they were huge.
Yeah.
Gen Zs now have Wi-Fi, like give me your password.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have
The
Like
smartphones.
90s,
air.
basically.
They are talking to Siri.
Mhm.
They're talking to little. They had AI experiences even before we are now. And then you have
Mhm.
Generation Alpha, which again is like my kids. And I will never, ever, ever forget when my son was about 3 years old and he started arguing with Siri because she didn't want to do certain things. And so I was amazed at that because you're small. Like, what do you know about this particular program? But that's generation. So the Gen Zs now believe in, instead of harmony, they're looking for work-life integration. So they're looking for purpose and value in their work.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So they want to know that they're making a difference. They want to know that what I'm doing is adding to a bigger picture. They are interested in the vision of a thing. So
Yeah.
whereas the Gen Xers and the millennials did not care about the vision of your company, did not care about the value systems of your company, Gen Zs actually do.
Yes.
That's why you will find them to be the most inquisitive of the people in your workforce. But it's
Yeah.
Right.
not because they're trying to be disruptive. They're trying to assimilate what is going on in their world of work with their value systems.
Right,
Um,
right. It's finding that alignment.
They
Yeah.
have
yeah.
to find that alignment,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise they're just doing something for doing its sake. That's why
Yes.
they will, our older generation saved all their money, like up to
Yeah.
Gen Xers, we're saving for retirement. Gen Zs are like, we are flying and seeing the world.
Yes.
Integration is key to them.
Yeah.
So when you are leading a team, when you have all of these value systems essential to them, one of the key things you need to learn as a leader is how to communicate in a way that
Mm-hmm.
everybody can catch it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
one of the things that I would do is that I would say the same thing, but I would emphasize different aspects of it depending on who I'm speaking to.
Right, yes. And if it's a piece of communication that has to go across the board to everybody, then you choose different medium that you're going to use.
Different media.
That will attract different members of your workforce.
So, for instance, the Gen Xers, the boomers, they're going to read it. You work on the
Hmm.
words for them. But you
Right.
add a visual aid, but the
Yes.
visual aid has certain elements in it for your Gen Zs and millennials because they
Yes.
want it succinctly. And they just want imagery that captures that value system that you're trying
Right.
to communicate, or that. So you have to be cognizant of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
so, in a sense, as a leader now, more than ever, your communication is key. Your communication skills and
Um,
enhancing your communication capabilities is key, because that is the only way you are going to successfully
Mm-hmm.
pull these people together to create a high performing team.
Right.
so guys,
Wow,
this
ladies,
is
my
yeah,
goodness, Dana, we could go on all day, Emily. So
yeah.
we've
I was
gotten the
going to say
awareness.
this
We've
is
gotten the
awesome.
awareness, and Dana has inspired us. Emily, let's talk about the action.
Yeah, so I was going to say this is really awesome, Dana. I mean, yes, we can speak on it for some time because it's always interesting, and I think people are coming into their awareness at different stages, and of course, when you bump up into the problems, is then when you start to look and you want to get more. I mean, I think the to sum it up though, yes, we have the differences, and even as you explained it, in a way, you can't explain it without generalizing. However, coming back to your initial point, when we generalize, we are exercising or inherently biased in the way we look at things. And if we do that as leaders, we are limiting or potentially cutting off some of the good with the bad, right?
Yes.
Or what we think is good and bad. We've not we've we've boxed it in so that we are not able to really see more of what is really there, right? So I feel like coming back to the beginning where you said, what can leaders do? I heard being open
Mm-hmm.
to learning, being curious about the different generations. If you have the generations in your workforce, recognize that you have the generations in your workforce. These are the people that you are working with and through, and to be effective, how can I harness the strengths? Is what you had said, Dana, of these different groups, and see them as individuals, not only as groups, but
Yeah.
be aware of what might be important to the groups to give yourself some cues, but not be limited by those cues.
Right.
Right.
Perfect.
So Dana, it's been great. So I hope people will heed your call to action and be open and curious about the generations and think about, all from the silent generation. Because, even when I started and we introduced the topic, I forgot about the silent generation, but you're so right. They're
Yeah.
still we still have the chairman of the board and the some of the founders of companies,
Yeah.
and they have a very very different way of looking at things, and we're living in a very very different world.
Yes.
So it's interesting. I want to hear about leaders who are harnessing these different people in different ways and making their teams even more effective and reducing the conflict, and the stereotypes
Yeah.
Yeah.
that are producing the conflict and actually helping your teams be more and more high performing.
And
So
Yes.
can I
thank
just say one final thing, just as we're
absolutely.
wrapping up?
Yes.
Um, Go in with the mindset that the people that are in your organization, despite their generations, are wanting to find ways to add value to your organization or to your department or to your team. If you go in with that as your starting point, it'll be amazing how you'll start to see things a lot differently as you have conversations, as you listen. because you're what we're tending to do is we're tending to see people of different generations as difficult and as obstructive to the
Mhm.
progress or towards the attainment of goals. Maybe now from this conversation you can go into your office and see your team, but look at them through the lens of they are all looking for a way to add value to the objectives and the mission that is before them.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep. Love
Wonderful
that.
words to leave us on, Dana. Thank you so much. This has really been a pleasure
Thank you
having
so
Agreed.
you
much.
today.
So thank you, and everyone have a great day.
Take care.
All right. Bye
Bye.
now.